touch on who a little more who's Enlil and Enki, where they fucking come from in the history of them. And this is from Ancient Astronauts, Book of Enki Explained. So I'm going to let them talk for a little bit.
The dramatic recount of the desolation of Sumer and surrounding areas in ancient Mesopotamia explains that an evil wind of poisoned air originated in a distant plane.
Now this is written evil wind, you see? Yeah. And when you drop a nuclear weapon, nuclear weapon,
and the air is poisoned. Look, so let's say, here you go.
All right.
Listen.
And caused the great calamity. Enki states that his brother Enlil, along with Ninhursag, Ninurta, and Enki's own son Nergal, were responsible for the decision to use the poisoned weapons. Enki explains their decision to use the weapons of terror was one of fate and not destiny. The decision to use these weapons of terror was predicated on the ascendancy claims against Enki's firstborn son Marduk. A significant number of the Anunnaki were opposed to Marduk and or his son Nabu. Ninurta, Nergal, Ningishzida, Nanner, Ishkur, Utu, and Inanna all had their own personal motivations to move against Marduk and his son. Although Enki was in the minority defending his son Marduk, he forcefully convinced the other Anunnaki to exclude the Earthlings in this conflict. Anu, Enki's father who had remained on their home planet Nibiru, approved the use of the weapons, but also for the people to be spared. Consequently, Enlil summoned Nergal and Ninurta to his chambers in order to reveal the weapon's location. At this point, Enki's narrative moves further back chronologically to what he calls the prior times. He explains that in the prior times, there were no gods or humans on Earth. The gods resided on the great planet Nibiru, which possessed an elongated circuit around our sun. He describes Nibiru as having a reddish radiance from a thick atmosphere fed by constant volcanic eruptions.
Stop for a minute.
Enki
reddish around the planet. What illusion they have given you that represents that?
Mars?
No, Mars ain't an illusion. Mars is real. What illusion from a movie they've given you to represent that? Superman. He comes from Kryptonite. The red make him weak. Krypton was a red planet.
Green make him weak, but Krypton was a red planet, yeah.
Describes the planet-wide evolution of his ancestors into northern and southern hemispheric factions. A global war lasting thousands of our years persisted on Nibiru, which greatly diminished all life on the planet. Eventually a truce was declared. A warrior from the north named On and a maiden from the south named Antu were chosen to unify the two factions through marriage and the subsequent creation of a new royal lineage. Enki, the firstborn of their 3 sons, was seated on the throne. After Enki died without a male heir, the middle son, Anib, was pronounced the new heir. He chose Ninib, the daughter of his youngest brother, as his spouse. Anib and Ninib bore a son named An-Shargal, who became the 4th king of Nibiru. His spouse and half-sister Ki-Shargal held equal status. During his reign, An-Shargal determined Nibiru's great solar circuit and named its length as a shar. It was also during his reign that the laws of successorship were changed, due in part to the fact his spouse was also his half-sister.
The fight between
An-Shargal's firstborn son was technically with a concubine.
So that's a...
And then
and more of a deep dive on now and Neil and Enki.
And I want you to see something too also. And I'm not saying it is what it is, but also the ideology of men with multiple wives also come from them. Because they had their queens and they had concubines, because it was always a search to have a male heir. That's where also this other thing of having a male heir comes from. Because they always wanted a male heir. A male heir, either from the queen or from the concubine, would be able to rule and become the next ruler of Nibiru. That to me also is what caused the problem on Earth between Marduk, between his brother Ningasinga, which is Star, and with his father and with Enlil, because Enki is born, Enki is the firstborn, but he's born from the concubine. Enlil is the firstborn. Enlil is the secondborn, born from the fucking queen. Now, on Nibiru, Enki would be the ruler after his father dies. They come to Earth. On Earth, and I know it, but it's never said, and I know it. On Earth, when they get to Earth, Anu said Enlil is the complete overall leader of Earth. This is why in this is why in the mythology of the Bible he becomes God, because his father said, "You are the complete ruler." In irony, you are the complete ruler of Earth. He said, "Enlil, you can rule all of the land and the waters and so on and so forth, right?" But Enlil was the ruler. Marduk now.
So that's the first question. Who was Enlil? And was he good or bad?
That's a good question, because I think all of them was fucking people. All of them have pieces of shit ways. Because the thing about it, Enlil is the son of Anu, the brother of Enki. He's the second born, and he's been given the right to rule over Earth, right? Enki is the firstborn. He's a scientist. You know what I'm saying? He's a scientist, and he would have ruled on Nibiru, but he's comfortable in the zone that he's at because he came to Earth and he's amazed by the things that he's seen and what he's doing and being a scientist and exploring. His son Marduk is power hungry. He feels that if they were still on Nibiru, his father would be eventually leader of Nibiru, and Enlil should not. Therefore, Enlil should not be the leader of the whole planet Earth. And I'm going to lead one day. So that's why he did that shit. What he was talking about, what he did right there, when he tried to he tried many times to overthrow power before his time for reign. His time of reign came during, I think, the age of Aquarius or age of Capricorn. Everybody got an age. I could be wrong with the age. Everybody had an age that they were ruling. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't want to wait, so he started a war. And that's the war that led Enki to start talking about what led them to that war and how they first got here. You know what I'm saying? And that's when he started telling the story, because that's what led to that war. The war because Marduk wanted control of the planet. He wanted to rule the planet before his time, and he was not willing to wait. So he sparked a war between his family, and everybody was forced to choose sides. And because a lot of shit happened on the planet. A lot of shit happened on the planet. You know what I mean? The fact that when you start with the Bible, the Genesis, that means the Genesis is the genealogy of Isis, right? So what happens is she's telling her line and everything that came from her. And through this, you hear the stories of Cain and Abel, this and that really affected them. Because for whatever reason it is, how they dealt with most of the problems before they even came into those wars was wrestling. I think that's where we got wrestling from. They wrestle. That's how they deal with their war. And the whole idea of a brother killing a brother, because it kept happening.
That's why they got the ideas probably with the slaves. They used to make the slaves wrestle too back in the days.
Right.
African slaves.
Right.
Entertainment.
Yeah. And you know, you have the stories in the Bible of Cain and Abel killing each other, and there's more stories of when Seth and Heru. Now, when I was younger, I thought the Seth and Heru story is a story that comes out of Kemet. When you sit down there and you go in depth with the Bible in the Emerald Tablets, it goes from all them stories are connected. Every last one of them fucking stories were connected. And when I saw that, that shit made me go like, the Egyptian stories were connected to the Bible stories. Eknat is Moses, and all of these stories were connected to each other. So, but they, like I said, when they put the Bible together, they left some of them stories out. And when I'm learning about Kemet, I'm learning.
And the reason Eknat was Moses and the Egyptians accounts is because you realize, as you know, they always change names. And they look at movies like vampires, and you see actually like, I went by many names. I was called this, that. This really got all these like godlike creatures from these movies from, like, really at. So,
but Eknat was human.
And so it's hard to keep track of them because they went by like probably like 15, 16, 18, 19, 20 names. So everybody think this guy. This is kind of a genius.
You see, Eknat though, this is when they started fucking with us. This is when Anu said, teach the humans, blah, 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 blah. So they were choosing people, what we call as priests at the time. And they would tell them secrets, but not all the secrets, the secrets. Yo, this is how it is, this is how it is. Get your initiates, get everybody, because they're trying to civilize us into being something similar to them, but they don't want us like them. But in the Emerald Tablets, that nigga Enki said, he said, yo, bro, who y'all are is just like who, Thought said it. Thought said, who y'all are is just like who we are. Matter of fact, y'all have the ability to be greater than us. And I think that's what scared Enlil. And Akhenaten, I think, was manipulated, not by Amun-Ra, because Akhenaten is from Egypt. We know that Amun-Ra, we know Marduk took over Egypt. I think Akhenaten was manipulated by Enlil, who we know as Yahweh. Why? Because the nigga Akhenaten, who was Moses, decided, and if you look at the stories of Egypt, Akhenaten looked different than all the Egyptians. Head looked bigger, this looked bigger. I'm going to get to a good point in that too. Head looked bigger, body looked better. He looks weird. Now coming back, they feel that Akhenaten was a half-breed of them. And I think Akhenaten was used to break down the structure that was before, the multiple god structure. Once again, a takeover. Fuck my brothers and my sisters and my uncles and all of them. Fuck all of them. It's one God. One God. You understand what I'm saying? That one God was that one God. Before, the humans was worshiping all of them. But somebody was like, nah, you're just going to worship one. And Akhenaten did that. But when you read the story of Akhenaten and all Moses, they chased Moses because Moses stole the Ark of the Covenant. What was the Ark of the Covenant? The Ark of the Covenant, basically a power source that powered the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And he took it. And when he took it, they chased him to retrieve it back. You understand? He knew what he was doing. He was trying, what do you think he was trying to do? Crush Egypt. Bring them back into a lower state. You're doing that because you're going against people that you're at war with. You understand what I'm saying? And he left. And this is why they chased him. You know what I'm saying? This is why they chased the so-called Moses. So these stories are all tied into each other. When you start to learn, you start to realize that everything,
So who's Enki? Was Enki bad? Do you think anyone Enki Enlil was either bad?
Okay, I think I lost track. Enlil didn't want to fucking tamper with our DNA. He said it's wrong. He said we're not supposed to do that. He said no. They rationalized it and said yeah. Enlil was disgusted by us. He didn't even really like to be on Earth, so he stayed in his ship. Enki, he liked us. He fucked with us. He did certain things for us. He tried to save them niggas from the flood. But Enki, to me, was also a piece of shit. He raped women for his own pleasure and his own benefit. He tampered with beings and he shouldn't have tampered with it. For whatever reason he did it, to see if he could do it, because he was a great scientist. I think this is where the 5% get the whole story of Yakub, the great scientist that created the white man. You understand what I'm saying? I think that's where all that stories come from. Now, Thot will be about the only one who I consider decent. Because he said, I'm not a god. I'm the son of God. I'm the son of Atlantis, and I'm here to help you. He never lied. The rest of them said they were gods. You ain't seen his story? How did Enki start off his story? In the Emerald Tablet. He said, in the beginning, there was no humans and gods on earth. All the gods reside on Nibiru. But you're not a god. You reside on the fucking planet like I do. You see how they...
So like every other person that have royalty.
Right. And that's where we get the whole idea of heroes from. Because they called themselves heroes. Heroes is not in the sense of what we look at it. Yeah. That, like a chariot, was a UFO to them. We looked at the chariot, the horse, boom, boom, boom. But that's where we got it from. And that's that's probably most likely we got the idea of heroes from. Because we heard them saying it all day long, so we attribute anybody who's muscular doing anything that's strong a hero. You got it. Because that, boom. So it's hard to say if any of them was good or bad. They had their own self-interest.
And yeah, that's it. I think they move basically like they little higher frequency, not little, but they high frequency. That's the other things they can do and things they know.
Yeah, but they were vibrating on a low frequency.
They vibrate on low frequency like most humans do. And I didn't get to touch on the last question for the last topic. The Emerald Tablets. I think it's something before anything. I don't know what's the beginning of the time. For like what's the first thing that started. Why it's so important is because the reason I think why it's so important is the government, allegedly, I'm always gonna say allegedly because we don't know for sure, but it's definitely very fucking compelling. The powers that be use their tactics. To this
I think
day.
it's done.
I was about to say that all, like I said, they doing. And you have to understand this. Like, we get to that point in a minute. I don't want to jump around about it. Like, all could be, or most likely it could be fucking dumb. But, yeah, you got anything more to say about Enki Enlil before we move on? Oh, but in fact, let's play a little more of this clip before we move on. Then we can see if we touch on this shit. Then we move on to the third topic. Let's let them more of this Enki Enlil and their family.
When Kishagal later bore a son who was technically the legal heir, a succession crisis spawned. The result was the adoption of the law of the seed, whereby a son by a half-sister, whenever born, will rise above all for succession. Kishagal's son, named Anshar, became heir to the throne in the fifth
Now you
king
understand
of
why
Nibiru.
these fucking people who
And
want to
Shar
call
took
themselves
his half-sister
Mythbusters,
named
white people, all
Ishtar
this
as his
intermixing with
spouse.
each other, fucking their sister
Enki
and their
explains that it
cousin,
was during
because they got
Anshar's
this
reign when the
foolishness from them.
Nibiruans discovered a breach in their atmosphere. Anshar and Kishar were unable to overcome the severe climate change, and their son
this is what started it all.
Inshar inherited the coming global disaster. Inshar spent several circuits around our solar system
Shar's like
studying the
a year
atmospheres
for
of
them,
Nibiru's
one of their
planetary
years,
neighbors.
which is
Even
30
so,
days
he
of
was
our
unable
time.
to devise a
No.
solution for the atmospheric degradation,
260
and
days
it
of
grew
our time.
worse. Inshar took his half-sister Ninshar as his spouse, but he did not ever produce a male heir. However, Inshar did have a
Yeah,
firstborn
Lawrence
son
doesn't have the
named
same mother.
Duuru
They
by
felt
a
it was
concubine.
okay.
When he ascended to the throne as the seventh king, Duuru bucked succession tradition and chose Dauru, his childhood love, as his spouse. Dauru was unable to bear a male heir, but she found a child at the palace gateway who was eventually adopted and decreed legal heir. His
Sounds like
name
Moses.
was Lama.
Lamar.
It is at this point
That's
in
where
the
these
planet's
names come
chronology that the Nibiruans decided on two courses of
That's what
actions
they
to
named
resolve
Mars,
the
Lamar.
atmospheric degradation. One of the suggestions was to fire missiles into the volcanoes in order to initiate eruptions that would in turn
34,000 years
thicken
ago,
the
they're talking
atmosphere.
about missiles.
This approach did
In a
not work
tablet.
and left the Nibiruans with only one other course of action, the use of gold
Nuclear
power.
bombs, all this shit.
But after 4 shars had passed and no gold was obtained, rebellion took root. A prince named Alelu took up arms against the king.
But
Lama
Alelu looked like
retreated to a
Allah.
tower in the palace where, after a brief struggle, he fell to his death. Alelu pronounced himself king. Alelu's accession to the throne created much consternation among the people, and he was summoned to the 7 who judge.
So like that's you get that whole video on the book of Enki Explained, Ancient Astronaut Archives. But yeah, man, like that's looking at Enki and Enlil and where they went from. Like he explained it in a little more in depth, and of course the soundbite we had also explained a lot in depth. Even I just learned more about their whole family motherfucking tree. And you have to understand, the book we talking about is 30,000 years old, and they fucking talking about bombs, missiles, technology, and spacecrafts, and this and that. Shit that you only see in the movies. And now you want to everybody get these ideas from.
Because I guarantee you
There's abundant movie ideas in that book.
that we in 2023, it didn't take to 2022 for somebody to go read them fucking tablets when they've been around since Zachary Sitchin started talking about it. You know what I mean? So for the last 30, 40 years, believe me, down to Steven Spielberg, to all of these people have read the Emerald Tablets. You can sit there and realize that, wait a minute, this is too much coincidence going on in these books compared to what they're talking about, artificial insemination. They're talking about things that's only possible now. We're talking about 33, 34,000
And
years
talk about
ago.
things that's not impossible now.
And you know,
It's
I think
more
what blows
And
people's
then the
mind.
process, we're not even close. We're a little closer now, but we're not even close to what the technology is.
Yeah, and the reason why is because we don't. What we're doing is we're not utilizing the planet for our technology. We're creating and manufacturing time. They put things on stone because when you realize that stone has spiritual powers and essence and energy, and it has magnetic issues, is why they use stone for shit. They knew that stone would never deteriorate over time. They knew that if you gave you a damn computer, you damn assholes, that how would you even know when you discovered the computer what it was, and then all the information in the computer by the time you discover it wouldn't be around, and the shit would deteriorate. So everything is left on stone. The buildings, the stone, everything is stone. 30,000 years ago, most of the apartment buildings that we live in won't no longer be here, but them pyramids would, and that's the reason why they were built like that. You see, so it wasn't about that is not primitive by the least, and it's far more advanced than we will ever be at this point.
That's a little bit of Enki and